Imagine the ancient Egyptian burial chambers, glistening with gold, where pharaohs were interred not merely with riches, but with what they believed to be the very flesh of their gods. This was a metal unlike any other one that defied the ravages of time, incapable of tarnishing or succumbing to decay, preserving its pristine brilliance across millennia. Centuries later, the Lydians introduced crude electrum coins, stamped with the king's mark. This wasn't just a shiny metal. It was an innovation, a standardized weight, a guaranteed purity, a promise that traveled reliably from Mesopotamia to the distant Black Sea. It was the first formal assurance that this metal genuinely weighed what it claimed. The Byzantines followed with their Selidai, coins of remarkable consistency that journeyed from Russia to Sri Lanka. For 7 centuries, these gold pieces maintained a precise weight of 4.5 grams and 99% purity. Such was their reputation that merchants, recognizing their inherent honesty, often rejected the empire's debased coins, demanding only the trusted integrity of solid gold. Then came the modern era with vaults beneath the Bretton Woods system. The U.S. dollar, once anchored to gold at $35 an ounce, represented a global monetary order. That steadfastness, however, ended abruptly the day Nixon famously closed the gold window in 1971, forever altering the landscape of international finance. Yet, even today, central bank reserves hold colossal quantities of gold: $682 billion in Fort Knox, $93 billion in European vaults, representing a staggering 40,000 tons, roughly 20% of all gold ever mined. This barbarous relic, as it was once dismissively called, somehow always reemerges as a beacon of trust whenever a crisis strikes. The profound question we must ask is not merely if gold possesses value. Its persistent presence confirms that, but rather, why this singular metal has consistently outlasted every monetary revolution, witnessing the rise and fall of empires, the collapse of countless currencies, and the debasement of nearly everything governments have ever touched. 5,000 years. From sacred burial masks to contemporary ETFs, from the decrees of pharaohs to the pronouncements of central bankers who declare gold obsolete even as they quietly accumulate it at record pace. This isn't mysticism or a historical accident. This is the archaeology of trust itself. Ancient Egypt grasped a fundamental truth about permanence. Gold does not tarnish. It does not corrode. One could inter it in a tomb for 3 millennia, and when archaeologists finally breached the seal, the metal would gleam as vividly as if it had been placed there just yesterday. The Egyptians revered gold as the flesh of the gods, because it embodied immortality, the one tangible substance that seemed to defy the inexorable march of time. By the Old Kingdom, 2686 to 2181 BCE, gold had already cemented its role as a stable standard of value in international trade, particularly with Nubia. Fittingly, as the Egyptian word nub meant gold, and Nubia was known as the land of gold. Its inherent permanence rendered it a reliable medium across generations, accepted throughout the vast trade networks of the ancient Near East. But what truly elevated gold from mere treasure to the bedrock of money? That transformative innovation emerged from Lydia, in what is now Western Turkey, around 630 BCE. King Croesus began stamping his distinctive mark onto electrum coins, a natural alloy of gold and silver. This act didn't just certify the intrinsic value of the metal. It guaranteed its weight and purity, establishing the issuer's credibility. It was, in essence, a promise solidified in metal. Merchants from Mesopotamia to Greece, and across Phoenician trading centers, readily accepted these coins without the painstaking process of weighing or testing each piece. The royal seal signified centuries of consistent weight, honest purity, and institutional performance sustained across generations. The true innovation here wasn't metallurgical. It was conceptual. Imprinting the ruler's image transformed a piece of metal into a verifiable promise, and such promises, when consistently honored over generations, evolve into their own enduring form of infrastructure. Constantine the Great cemented this concept with the solidus in 312 C, a coin of 4.5 grams, 99% pure gold, an astonishing standard maintained for 700 years. Byzantine emperors financed vast military campaigns, elaborate bureaucracies, and monumental construction projects, all while steadfastly resisting the fiscal pressures that often lead to currency debasement. The solidus effectively became the dollar of the Middle Ages. Merchants from the Baltic to the Indian Ocean accepted it without question. Russian traders, Persian merchants, and Sri Lankan importers alike implicitly trusted this single coin because the Byzantine state had proven, generation after generation, that the weight stamped on the metal perfectly matched the metal in their palm. Emperor Justinian I, ruling from 527 to 565 CE, financed extensive wars, crucial infrastructure, and the expansion of an empire, all without undermining the very currency that made such ambitious projects possible. However, when Romanos III Argyros ascended the throne in 1028 CE, the integrity began to erode. The debasement of the solidus commenced. By 1078, the coin that had maintained 99% purity for 7 centuries now contained only 33% gold. Italian merchants in Constantinople's bustling markets vociferously rejected these new, diminished coins. They demanded the old solidi, the full-weight, honest metal. They refused to accept imperial decree over the tangible reality of the metal itself. 7 centuries of painstakingly accumulated credibility were utterly destroyed in a mere 50 years of fiscal expedience. When the Byzantine emperor offered the new, debased coins, merchants unequivocally chose the old, honest metal over imperial authority, starkly revealing where their true trust lay when their own wealth was at stake. The 13th century heralded a vibrant commercial revival in Western Europe. Florence, in 1252, minted the florin 3. 5 grams of 24-karat gold, known for its consistent weight. Venice responded in 1284 with the ducat, achieving an exceptional 47% purity, the highest medieval metallurgy could possibly reach. Here, it wasn't a single monolithic authority, but rather competing issuers, each disciplined by the relentless forces of the market. English merchants in Bruges meticulously weighed Florentine florins. Genoese traders favored Venetian ducats over German guilders. Exchange rates naturally emerged between these competing, honest coinages, with markets swiftly punishing any issuer who dared to attempt debasement. Gold's utility as international money thus depended not on the might of an empire or an arbitrary decree, but on the existence of issuers who profoundly understood that credibility, once squandered, could not be swiftly rebuilt. In 1717, Isaac Newton, then serving as master of the mint, made calculations that inadvertently pegged sterling to gold. What started as a technical adjustment hardened into 2 centuries of monetary policy. Britain formally adopted the gold standard in 1816. Germany followed suit in 1871, leveraging Franco-Prussian War reparations. By 1900, every major nation, with the sole exception of China, operated on some form of gold standard. The underlying theory was elegantly simple. Currency was defined as a fixed quantity of gold, and central banks were obligated to exchange paper for metal on demand. Balance of payments deficits, it was believed, would automatically self-correct through gold flows and subsequent price adjustments. The reality, however, proved far more complex. Central banks frequently sterilized gold flows, manipulated discount rates, and actively prevented automatic adjustments. The classical gold standard, from the 1870s to 1914, provided a measure of stability not through rigid adherence to fixed rules, but rather through the judicious discretion of central banks operating within gold-backed constraints. Then came the profound disruption of the Great Depression. Britain, attempting a return to normalcy, restored gold convertibility in 1925 at its pre-war parity. The currency, however, proved to be overvalued. This led to persistent unemployment, widespread economic pain, and escalating political instability, the heavy cost of maintaining gold backing when economic conditions urgently demanded flexibility. By 1931, Britain was compelled to abandon gold. The choice became starkly clear: either maintain the metal standard or actively manage the national economy. Governments overwhelmingly chose to manage their economies over maintaining gold convertibility. The system that had provided century-long stability simply could not withstand the unprecedented stresses of industrial-scale warfare and a global depression. But what would replace the inherent discipline of gold? July 1944. Allied nations convened in New Hampshire to forge a new monetary order. The eventual compromise, the U.S. dollar would be pegged to gold at $35 per ounce, and other currencies would, in turn, be pegged to the dollar. The U.S. committed to gold convertibility for foreign central banks, effectively creating a modified gold standard for the 20th century, mediated through the dollar's dominance. The 1950s and 60s ushered in European reconstruction, stable exchange rates, and expanding global trade. However, this system harbored a fatal contradiction, famously articulated as the Triffin dilemma. For the dollar to function as the world's primary reserve currency, the U.S. had to run current account deficits. These deficits inevitably accumulated dollars in foreign central banks. By the early 1960s, foreign dollar holdings began to exceed U.S. gold reserves, creating a mathematical impossibility. Convertibility could not be maintained if all holders simultaneously sought to redeem their dollars for gold. February 1965, Charles de Gaulle famously announced France's intention to redeem its dollar holdings for gold, a clear signal to other nations of the dollar's increasing vulnerability. The London Gold Pool, an attempt by central banks to defend the $35 price in private markets, ultimately collapsed in March 1968. May 1971. West Germany withdrew from Bretton Woods, unwilling to continue accumulating depreciating dollars. August 11, 1971. Britain requested $3 billion in gold from Fort Knox. Over a tense Camp David weekend, Nixon, Connally, Burns, and Volcker hastily designed a response. On Sunday evening, August 15, 1971, Nixon announced the temporary suspension of dollar-gold convertibility, a suspension that would, in fact, last forever. Gold-backed currency abruptly transformed into pure fiat money, its value now derived from government decree as legal tender, not its exchangeability for a tangible commodity. The intricate complexity of Bretton Woods had merely obscured a simple truth. Promises to convert paper into gold at fixed prices cannot endure when political pressures overwhelm the available metal. In 1971, gold stood at $35 per ounce. By January 1980, it had skyrocketed to $850 per ounce, a staggering 24-fold increase in nominal terms. The 1970s brought stagflation, OPEC oil shocks, inflation and unemployment rising simultaneously, a phenomenon Keynesian models had predicted as impossible. Gold proved to be an exceptional hedge against this unexpected inflation. Then, Paul Volcker took office in 1979, decisively raising the federal funds rate to 20%, engineering a deliberate recession to crush inflation. Gold's price plummeted from $850 to $300 by October 1982. The lesson was clear. Gold hedges inflation when central banks are unable or unwilling to raise rates, but it surrenders when monetary discipline is reasserted, revealing that gold's performance depends not on inflation itself, but profoundly on the policy context surrounding it. The early 2000s ushered in a new surge for gold, driven by post-September 11th geopolitical uncertainty, persistently low interest rates, and burgeoning demand from rapidly growing economies like India and China. Gold climbed from $260 in 2001 to over $900 by 2008, then surged to nearly $2,000 in September 2011 as investors desperately sought safe havens during the global financial crisis. With the arrival of COVID-19 in 2020, gold exceeded $2,000 for the first time as central banks implemented aggressive monetary easing. Predictions for 2024 through early 2026 see gold surpassing $5,000 per ounce. This monumental shift isn't because gold itself has fundamentally changed, but because trust in conventional alternatives has significantly wavered. Herein lies a profound irony. From 2001 to 2008, central banks in advanced economies were net sellers, often dismissing gold as a barbarous relic. Yet, the 2008 financial crisis prompted a fundamental reassessment. Suddenly, emerging market central banks became voracious net buyers. Russia, China, Turkey, and India rapidly accumulating reserves, even as Western economists continued to declare gold obsolete. In 2023 and 2024, approximately 1,000 tons are being purchased annually by central banks. They publicly dismiss gold, but their vault records tell a different story of quiet accumulation. Beneath the sophisticated layers of modern monetary theory lies an ancient recognition. Credibility forged through millennia simply cannot be quickly replicated. Today, central banks collectively hold 40,000 tons of gold, 20% of all gold ever mined, with $682 billion held in Fort Knox alone, and $93 billion in European reserves. Intriguingly, all 219,890 tons of gold ever mined would fit within a mere 22-meter cube, roughly 72 feet on each side. A surprisingly compact volume for an asset that has profoundly shaped 5 millennia of human economic history. Gold is no longer money in the traditional sense. Central banks abandoned the gold standard, and Nixon closed the gold window. Currencies now float freely, their value determined by dynamic market forces and the perceived credibility of central banks, not by convertibility into a physical metal. And yet, when COVID-19 struck, gold surged past $2,000. When inflation returned with a vengeance, investors accumulated physical gold and gold ETFs at an unprecedented pace. U.S. gold ETFs currently hold 2,019 tons, representing $280 billion in assets. When geopolitical tensions escalate, central banks quietly add to their reserves, often contradicting decades of official pronouncements claiming gold is obsolete. This enduring pattern reveals something profound about credibility and collective memory. Paper currencies represent a mere 50 years of fiat experimentation. Gold's trust, by contrast, is rooted in 5,000 years of institutional performance and societal acceptance. The British pound lost its gold backing in 1931. The solidus maintained its honesty for 7 centuries before its eventual collapse. Bretton Woods, the post-war global monetary system, lasted a mere 27 years. The Florentine florin was trusted for 300 years. Gold survived not because it possesses some exceptional intrinsic utility that inherently justifies its price. It doesn't. Gold survived because societies meticulously built credibility around it. Generation after generation, mintmaster after mintmaster, merchant after merchant, would examine coins in their palms and pose the simple, crucial question: does this weigh what it claims? And when that question was answered honestly, consistently, and reliably across centuries, the metal transcended its physical form. It became more than just metal. It became an infrastructure of belief itself. Central banks today are accumulating gold even as they publicly declare it a relic. Investors flee to gold whenever fiat currencies face a crisis. This is the metal that does not tarnish, does not decay, outlasting every empire that has ever stamped its image onto coins. This is not mysticism. This is a profound recognition that trust, once painstakingly built through millennia of consistent institutional performance, evolves into its own enduring kind of permanence. Gold's survival through every monetary revolution suggests something deep about human psychology that transcends purely rational economic calculation. Something about the fundamental difference between 50 years of promises and 5,000 years of demonstrable delivery. These systems, currency, value, trust, the metals we choose to regard as precious, are fundamentally agreements we construct. We can examine them, question them, and ultimately understand them. Gold's extraordinary 5,000-year journey, from the sacred tombs of Egypt to the impregnable vaults of central banks, reveals not some immutable natural law, but rather a long, accumulated series of human choices. Choices about what we choose to build credibility around, what we deem worthy to pass to the next generation, and what we instinctively reach for when all other promises inevitably fail.